Hi, this is Towanna Freeman with the Black Life Coaches Network. Thank you for joining us for another episode of BLCTV. Today's guest is Nicole Roberts Jones. She is a phenomenal speaker. She's a dynamic speaker. Just, I don't know how many more adjectives I can add to that speaker, but she is one of the, best in the business when it comes to life coaching. But her roots are the beginning of her career, stem way back to her early years, growing up as a teenager, being involved and active in the community as a mentor. And so it actually just completely lends to her ability to capture her audience and really just drive home the point of, life-changing inspiration and motivation. Welcome, Nicole, to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. How are you, Miss Life Coach Extraordinaire?
Oh my goodness, I'm doing fantastic. I was looking forward to today because, so many people can learn from you, Nicole. I mean, you're like my twin sister on the West Coast. And the reason why I can say that is because we had our start, both of us started working in with youth in the community. And from there, we started nonprofit organizations. We started speaking. So we have humble beginnings that just kind of blossomed. So tell me a little bit about that West Coast life and everything that, kind of moved you and kind of catapulted your life.
Well, interesting enough, my journey to this life wasn't designed by me. And you know how we all make our plans, and there's a saying that we make our plans and God laughs.
Oh, yes.
Well, my plans were so different. So my first career was in television and film, and I was doing well, working on great TV shows, going to all the hip Hollywood parties and all that fun stuff. And I remember one night, and this was 20 years ago, I remember one night I volunteered at a youth program at my church. And I am from South Central Los Angeles. So if you think 20 years ago, you realize that was around 93, which was 2 years after the LA riots. So when I moved home to Los Angeles, which was right before the riots, my community was altogether different. The neighborhood that I grew up in was not the same. And then I began to realize and even question myself, how did I make it? And I say it quote unquote because I'm not smarter. My parents didn't make any more money than anybody else in my neighborhood. I just made a different choice. And I realized in that moment, standing in that youth program in my church, that it really is the choices that we make that dictate the life that we live. And I really, that night, just felt empowered that I wanted every young person to understand that they had the power to choose. And so I marched myself up. Now, mind you, I'm on fire now, right? I march up to the Minister of Youth and I say, how come there's no programs here for teenage girls? And he looks at me and he says, why don't you start one? And I thought, I'm trying to help you do your job. I'm not trying to start a program. But that night, I really met me. And what I mean by that is, for so long, because people look at me and they say, okay, you're pretty, so you have this certain thing about you, so you should be in the entertainment industry. So I had become the woman that everybody else had defined me as, but I never stopped long enough to figure out who was I and what did I want out of this life. And for the first time in that room, full of 300 teenagers, all who had hope in their eyes and despair in their eyes, had possibility in their eyes and had fear in their eyes, in that room, I realized their eyes were my eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And I had made a choice based on what everybody else thought, and I never stopped long enough to choose for me. So that night I chose for me. So I went home that next day on fire, excited about possibility. Mind you, I'm doing this as a volunteer. I started this program and I absolutely loved it. And to make a really long story short, after I started that program, I started trying to find a job doing that thing. And I needed something called an MSW, every job description. I'm like, what the heck is an MSW, right? Because I didn't work in this field. I worked in television and film. And so I finally got an interview, and the woman had a master's of social work degree on her wall. Oh, so that really, that program, me getting my MSW, really catapulted my life and shifted who I was to who I was meant to be. So.
And then you wrote this wonderful book called Define Your Own Way, which completely tells the story of what you just said. It literally becomes the aha moment for all of us going, oh, so that's where the book comes from. Define Your Own Way is really just, it's a strategy, obviously, for anyone that reads it to understand, how to map that process out. But for you, it's the root of your beginning. It's
Right.
really what it is that you were called to do from day one, because you looked at that audience and they became a mirror for you, and then you learned to know yourself more and completely grow yourself up,
Right.
in the presence of these young people. And it's funny, young people have a way of doing that to you.
Hmm.
Any group that is hungry and thirsty for knowledge, they have a way of bringing the best out of you, and they will help redefine things that are not necessarily, in the best of shape. They'll help you, straighten those things out. And that's why I enjoyed my work with young people too. So I completely understand why, when you deliver your messages and your speakers, your platform as a speaker is so engaging.
And can I say too, the thing that I love, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, the thing that I really learned from youth is to be authentic,
Oh
because they
yeah.
will see through you and tell you about yourself so fast.
Oh yes.
So I learned probably as much from them as they did from me.
Oh
And
yeah.
even my first set of girls who I started working with are now in their 30s. So it amazes me that they're in their 30s and I'm still, 25. But it's that transparency that not only works with you but the youth, but it really helps you pour into your coaching clients, because if I'm on the road just like everybody else is. Life is not a destination, it's a journey. So we always have to be in the movement of working on ourselves. And so what I tell my clients all the time, I'm on the same path, I'm just 10 steps ahead of you. So I've been there. I'm holding a light so that you don't have to make some of the mistakes I've made. And if I haven't been there, then trust and believe there either I know someone that has, or I was at the door and realized, I'm about to go into a door that I shouldn't go in, and I made a choice. It's that saying that choices that we make,
Oh yeah.
make the life that we live. So it's just the authenticity part of it is really, to me, the foundation, because so many of us are afraid of who we have been and where we've been and the things we've been through. And it's when we can get through that. And I can tell you stories of me at 12 getting high every day. And the reason why I can tell you those kind of stories is because I'm no longer afraid of who I used to be.
That's right.
I mean, your show is not long enough for me to give you my laundry list of all the things I used to be. But it's understanding who you are at the foundation, at the core of that helps you begin to not only get over those things, but they become, you can't have a testimony without a test.
Without a test. That's
So
right.
that test, those things, no matter how bad they are, I call them the stew of you. So my favorite thing that my family loves for me to make is my pot of greens, right? And so
You make greens.
Girl, yes, I can make some good greens now.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, BLC audience. I had to interrupt her at that moment.
Let me tell you what makes my greens so good. And the reason why I'm using it for this context is I put a little vinegar in it and a little sugar. So it's a combination of the sweet and the sour that makes my greens so good. So I always tell folks it's the good and the bad that happen to us in our lives. If we learn how to mix it together just right, it's really what helps us become uniquely qualified to do the thing that we do, whether it's a lawyer, a teacher, a mom, whatever that is for you. It's really understanding how to make that into your stew, how to get over that sour and use it with that sweet so that you become uniquely qualified for the role you're meant to play in your life.
Yay! I love that. Thank you. That was good. I love the way that you are able to associate. You take, practical information, you associate it, and you deliver it in a way that is easily digestible, so that people can actually say, "Oh, I get it," and it resonates with me, and I can apply what she said. I can put myself in that space, or that's me, and I didn't know it, So let's talk about flipping on that switch when it comes to defining your own way, because in your book, it's more like it's a workbook at the same time. It has a lot of content that, I love workable content because I can actually insert myself in the process, and you step me through it. It's almost like you were standing in the room, watching me like an instructor. And so let's talk about flipping on the switch. When did that switch flip for you? I mean, I know you found yourself in the midst of working with young people, but that was one phase of the journey.
Yes.
Was there another flipping of the switch, or it was, okay, give me one more?
Good question. So in my book, as you've read, the D of Define is for discovery, right? So the one thing you have to discover is what holds you back. So for me, here I am working with youth, and I never really stopped long enough to pull up my own weeds. Now, I'm not a gardener, but I do know one thing, that if you want your crop to grow, you got to pull up your weeds, right? So for so long, my weed was being from my neighborhood. Now, for, you know, when I was growing up, the things that I got into, whether it's dating drug dealers, I told you guys about getting high a minute ago, all the things I did when I was young, I did those things to be down with my neighborhood. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted people to like me. And so being the only light-skinned person from my neighborhood, the only person that went to Catholic school, I got talked about. I got teased. And so I got busy doing things and being things I had no business doing. So that was one weed, right? Then I get into college, and now I'm embarrassed about being from South Central Los Angeles, from Inglewood to be exact. And so now I'm telling people I'm from Baldwin Hills. Now, if you're from, understand African-American LA, Baldwin Hills is an affluent African-American community. So now I'm embarrassed. I'm trying to use all my big words and, you know, and so for me, when I started working with young people, this is where that authenticity comes in. I remember when one of them said, "Ooh, Nicole, you're ghetto." And I thought, but then I realized what she was saying is I understood where she was from. Right. And it helped me really say to myself, because at first I was like, I'm ghetto, I'm trying to get over that. But what I realized in that moment was because I was being authentic with her, she could see herself in me. And so for me in that moment was the first time that I was actually proud of where I was from. And that was after I started my program. And so I realized that it's really understanding that everything, like I just said, that stew, but it's not just understanding that the good and the bad, but it's really conquering it. Yes. So that gave me really low self-esteem. I dated men for years. So I went from the notion that I had to marry a drug dealer to now I'm dating actors, and I'm being honest. So I'm looking for men with money because that was what was ingrained in me, another weed, right? Right. So I had to realize that I do not need a man to make me. My husband is my equal partner in this business called life. Right. I'm not behind him. He's not in front of me. We are sitting side by side. But for so long, again, ingrained in me was for men to take care of me. So, you know, I can go on and on with the various roots, but I had to begin to uproot them and begin to really grow my self-confidence. And really the foundation of everything is that self-confidence and really building your I love myself muscle so that you can begin to understand what your gifts are, what your purpose is in using those gifts. And then you begin to learn how to love yourself through even the ugly or bad or hurtful things that happen to you. So that really was, one of my girls called me out, and that was part of my next growth spurt. And I had never spent time with myself, never. Right. So I remember that year was a year after I started my youth program. So now I'm 24. I'm aging myself, but it doesn't matter. Yes, it was 20 years ago. I was 24, and I remember sitting in a restaurant by myself for the first time ever, and how ashamed I was, how embarrassed I was. I felt like everybody was looking at me. And I realized in that moment I had never spent any time with me. And so I made myself do that at least once a week because it was hard. And then over time I did it more. So now when I'm on the road, I'm excited to be by myself.
Oh yeah, I get that. I know.
But it was just that moment of starting to, I call it dating myself.
Right.
I just spent time with me, and it helped me begin to explore what did I like, what did I not like? What are the emotions that I'm feeling that I don't understand? I mean, it was just really pouring into me. So as I'm helping these young girls, and now I'm working with women, but back then, when I was helping teenage girls find themselves, I hadn't even truly found myself yet. So that's really kind of the next level. You know, I found something I love to do, but then I had to find myself in the midst of it too.
Right. We're talking to Nicole Roberts Jones. She's our guest today on BLCTV, and we're discussing, you know, defining your own way. We're discussing how to basically, you know, the process of self-discovery. When you know you need to, you want something better for yourself. You feel that there's something great in you, and you just don't know how to, you know, get a hold of it and really, take the steps to execute a plan and make it happen. And so, Nicole, you know, we're going to jump from, you know, your days as, you know, as your involvement in the community and kind of leap into the professional women's environment, you know, because there's a lot to be said, you know, for, you know, grown women, you know, working, you know, in the corporate environment, no matter what their profession is, who are still in the self-discovery process. And so how have you translated that message from the community into, you know, the professional environment that you are most often called upon to be as speaker?
So interesting enough, no matter what you do, whether it's in the community, whether you're a mom, whether you're a mate, whether you're a CEO or a worker on a job, every environment you go to, you bring who? You. So if you are not fully in your own lane, then the breakdown usually begins with you. So if my relationship is not going well, instead of me blaming my mate, I need to look at me. If something on the job is not happening well, I remember a time where every one of my staff were like breaking down for some reason. I'm like, what is going on with everybody? No, it was me. So really understanding how can I serve me first and then serve others. So the one thing that I see more and more often with women, women that are doing well, whether it's corporately and family or what have you, is we forget about ourselves. So it's really learning how to balance it all, and that you can have everything, but you've got to have you first. Right. And so that's the foundation. And so for so many women, success is defined by everything else but love. Oh, yeah. And so self-love is first. So I still see that. It's interesting. Even though, you know, years ago it was just teenage girls, then I started working with women, whether I work with women entrepreneurs or women that are actually working in Fortune 500 companies, I still see the same thing. It's learning to love yourself and take time for you. And what does that mean? What does that mean if I am, this happened to me. I remember my first job after I got my MSW, I had a staff of about 20 and I was in my late 20s and everybody was well over my age. And I remember trying to fight for respect. And then I remember, because again, this is in the middle of me growing myself, right? I remember when I finally kicked in my own self-respect, how people just started respecting me automatically. I stopped asking for it. I stopped fighting for it. I just started really serving people and understanding who I needed to be in that space. And it totally changed everything I did within that company. And I remember one particular staff member who, oh my God, every day she would come in my office crying. I was like, oh, I didn't come here for that. And I remember when I stopped and I realized I needed to feed her spirit. And I said to her, talk to me about what that's about. And she looked at me. And from that space, because at first I'm thinking, I have a job for her to do. I don't have time for that. But again, I had to stop, look at my own self in that and realize I'm being bothered because there's probably something in her that I need to be working on myself too. And I grew so much in the space. I mean, every day she came in my office and it bothered me at first when I got over myself and realized I needed to make the space for her, the difference. So in my humble opinion, whether it's an employee, whether it's a child, whether it's your mate, no matter what it is, even if you're living in a neighborhood and your neighbor is like getting on your nerves because he or she is putting stuff in your lawn, it's all in how you take yourself into that situation that makes a difference.
Absolutely. And you have some great mentors in your life. You, you know, everybody, you know, you try to get to the next level. So for every phase of your life and growth and development, there are, you know, introductions to wonderful people that can help, you know, navigate that path for you. They can help. But let's talk about some of the people that have influenced your life and what does a mentor mean to you, and what are you looking for in someone that takes you to the next level?
Sure. So, you know, it's interesting when you look at people's bios, that's always yesterday. That's the yesterday version of me. That's all the stuff I already did, you know, and so many of us forget to continue to look forward. So I'm working on the 2020 version of Nicole. I'm not focused on today. I'm focused on what am I going to be 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now. And so really for me, when I'm looking for a coach or a mentor, because to me, they could be kind of, you know, hand in hand. You want someone that, like I said earlier, that's on the path you're on, but 10 steps ahead of you. Yes. Because you want to be learning. So whether that's you're trying to be a better wife, whether that's, you know, I am really trying to improve my serve as a coach, whatever that looks like. And so I've had mentors, you know, one of my favorite jobs, when was that? Probably around 95. I had the pleasure of working at First Family Church in Los Angeles, which at the time was the biggest African-American church. And they had hired me to build a family resource center for the community. And so Pastor Cecil L. Chip Murray, by all means, was the pastor of my church when I started that program for youth 20 years ago. He is definitely still my mentor. This man, I had just joined his church maybe a month before then, and he poured so much pride and encouragement and belief in me, a 23-year-old girl who wanted to start a program he had never met. And then he continued. So when I started working at the church, I learned so many things from Pastor, like how to say no, but make people feel like you said yes. You know, so that you don't leave people, you keep their spirit intact. Right. Even if you have to tell them no, you want them to have their dignity and their honor still intact when they leave your office. And I could go on and on, but he definitely is still a mentor. And actually, I dedicated my second book, It's Your Time to Shine, to him. And then I would say currently in the place I'm in, as I began to grow my company a couple of years ago, ago, I came upon Motivating the Masses, which actually I work for now. But at the time I didn't. I had my own company. And Lisa Nichols was definitely a mentor to me because she was on a path that I had just started to, I've been a speaker for 20 years, but I had started doing more of it when my book came. People were calling me and asking me to come, and I didn't know how to, organize myself as a speaker. And so I looked to Motivating the Masses for programming, specifically our Speak and Write to Make Millions program, to really help me begin to grow this new career. And so for me, I just really look for people. One, I'm a servant first. So whoever is in my camp, you have to be a servant. I can't have people around me that are selling people, that are just trying to make money on people. That doesn't feel good to me. I am a servant. I know that I'm a servant leader. So anybody that I'm around has to be in alignment with that. And Lisa definitely was, and so was the company. And so she fastly became my mentor. Funny enough, she went to First Stand Me, and I met her 20 years ago, but we lost touch for 15 years. So was so super excited to get reconnected with her, and now she is my boss. And so then I also have a great mentor who is more seasoned than me, married, and is my mentor in my marriage. So it's really having people in your life.
Yes.
To help you grow in every area of your life. So.
Absolutely, because one person can't necessarily satisfy all aspects of your life. Absolutely.
Right.
Well, Nicole Roberts Jones, thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad you could be with us today. I want to have you back so that we can talk more about some of the things that are going on, but more so like a Q&A, so that some of our audience can actually ask you some questions that can, help them with their discovery process.
Yes, happy to do that. Thank you again. Thrilled to be a part, and I look forward to the Q&A. I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. You take care.
All my self-confidence, and really the foundation of everything is that self-confidence and really building your I love myself muscle so that you can begin to understand what your gifts are, what your purpose is in using those gifts, and then you begin to learn how to love yourself through even the ugly or bad or hurtful things that happen to you. So that really was one of my girls called